contact by 12 o'clock. Very bright yellow object.
4,000 feet above the ocean, a pilot and his passenger see two enormous yellow objects.
There is no absolute explanation.
The captain of another commercial jetliner watches an impossibly large disk fly under him and become invisible.
The dimension was huge, absolutely huge.
Now, pilots are coming forward to relive these incredible events.
So we'll be flying really the exact position and direction.
Exactly the same route.
And their colossal encounters are revealed on tape.
I have no idea what it was. Say away from 17,000.
Are UFO sightings growing to epic proportions?
This can turn out to be one of the most critical UFO sightings.
This is case number 86206. Giant UFOs.
It just flew right over me.
April 23rd, 2007, approximately 3 p.m. A pilot for Orani Airlines is flying a pedestrian route over the English Channel. In the distance, he suddenly sees a brilliant yellow light. He immediately radios his sighting into Jersey Air Traffic Control. He has just spotted something gigantic, something he claims is almost a mile wide. These are actual radio communications between the cockpit and air traffic control.
Do you have any traffic by 12 o'clock level?
No traffic at all in your 12 o'clock.
Roger, I've got an extremely bright yellow-orange object straight ahead. Very flat platform. We're looking at it through binoculars as we speak.
After initially seeing nothing, Jersey Air Traffic Control then confirms the object on radar. They also receive visual confirmation from a second pilot on another airline. Soon after, a second enormous object is sighted by the original pilot. He says it is smaller than the first, but still thousands of feet across.
Looking through binoculars as I am now, there's a second one just appeared behind the first one from where I am.
Neither the pilot nor his air traffic controller are able to explain what these colossal objects are or where they came from.
We're here in the UK, and these are not your everyday sightings. These are not little lights in the sky. What we have are descriptions of huge disc-shaped craft, strange objects that these pilots have never seen before.
I'm a pilot myself. I'm really interested to meet these pilots who are actually far more experienced than I am, who have seen something that they believe is a UFO.
You've got huge objects that dominate the landscape around them, that overwhelm the planes they're flying, and you've got proximity. Pilots fly closer to these objects and see them closer than any other witness.
With these sightings of massive UFOs reported by multiple pilots, the investigation is focusing on these high-caliber witnesses. Dr. Ted Ackworth will recreate the original Orani flight over the English Channel with the pilot and his passengers.
I can't wait to meet them, sit with them in the cockpits of their aircraft, and kind of get from their mouths their stories of what they saw.
Pat Uskert will scrutinize the physical descriptions of these airborne giants with an atmospheric scientist.
I want to get a complete description of the objects and eliminate atmospheric phenomena, balloons, or anything else that could be in the sky, and make sure that we're talking about legitimate UFOs.
And Bill Burns will examine both the eyewitness testimony and the follow-up reports to these incredible incidents.
Pilot activity is full of science. It's full of engineering. It's full of routine. You take all that science and you apply it to something so unusual that's never been before, now you have something you can investigate.
Joining the team is documentary filmmaker James Fox, a researcher who was one of the first to speak with the Orani Airlines pilot after his sighting in 2007.
I met with Captain Ray Boyer about 2 months after his original sighting, and I think it's important for us to get up and recreate the flight path to get his perspective on what took place.
Though encounters with giant UFOs are rare in comparison to most UFO sightings, they are not unheard of. In 2000, a British housewife in Bonsall claims to witness what some estimated to be a nearly 3-mile wide pink and white disc. In 1996, over a 134-mile stretch of highway in Canada's Yukon Territory, more than 30 witnesses confirmed seeing a saucer-shaped object bigger than a football field. Triangulation data later revealed the object to be at least half a mile wide. And in 1986, the pilot of a Japanese Airlines flight traveling between Iceland and Anchorage, Alaska, reported 3 objects trailing his 747. 2 of the objects were small, but the captain described the third as twice the size of an aircraft carrier. The giant object was tracked by ground and airborne radar. And the FAA logged over 60 minutes of data confirming the anomaly. Why do massive UFOs appear to be tracking our commercial aircraft? Captain Ray Boyer's encounter occurs on April 23rd as he captains Orani Airlines Flight 544 from Southampton to the island of Alderney, one of several small islands located in the channel. His audio transmissions from the flight show a pilot fully aware of his unusual situation. He attempts to get as much information about the objects as possible.
544, any more information on that aircraft, please?
544 negative. It's just the primary contact that we sometimes get anaprop on the radar. There is something possibly or left 10 o'clock at a range of 3 miles this time.
I've got a definite contact by 12 o'clock. Very bright yellow object looking, well, like a cigar.
His sighting expands to include a second massive object. And he is not the only one able to see something.
Roger 544, just confirming that all the passengers can see this aircraft. It's dead ahead, can't say how far, probably 5 miles, but it's staying the same size. Looks to be off the northwest coast of Alderney.
But the flight is short, and Boyer soon finds himself safely landing the aircraft on Alderney. Air traffic control on the nearby island of Jersey alerts several other pilots coming into the airspace about Boyer's sighting.
If you could keep a good lookout as you pass down the side of Alderney. We've cross-referenced this with traffic inbound to Jersey from the south, which saw the objects from the vicinity of Sark towards Alderney at the same level.
Aircraft Romero, we've copied all that. Keeping a good lookout, sir.
Thank you.
But when they arrive, they see nothing. The objects are gone. Once on the ground, Captain Boyer makes a few quick diagrams of what he sees and sends his logs to operations. The reaction to the event is thorough, and Bill and Pat are hoping that Boyer's immediate actions following the encounter might reveal more information.
What made you come forward?
Law. It's what you have to do. It's the British system. If you see an object or other aircraft or that shouldn't be where it is, then you have to make a report.
So this is a standard report that pilots have to fill out when they see a UFO, and they're encouraged to.
It's not necessarily just for UFOs, it's for something unusual in controlled airspace. It could be another aircraft which shouldn't be there. Maybe it hasn't been picked up by radar. And if you see it, then you've got to report that. That's the rules.
According to the United Kingdom Civil Aviation Authority, quote, a reportable occurrence in relation to aircraft means any incident which endangers, or which, if not corrected, would endanger an aircraft, its occupants, or any other person.
What is the standard reaction when a pilot sees something in airspace?
In British airspace, all I can say is it's just what's done. In American airspace, I understand that there's companies out there that don't want this sort of thing talked about, and I've heard that some pilots have been threatened that if they do talk about this sort of thing, they'll be fired.
Though he isn't ridiculed or threatened, Boyer's account is met with little interest. The British government declares the incident unworthy of any follow-up investigation.
The British military did not come back with any response immediately, although they did issue a few days later a statement stating that as the sighting wasn't of any threat to UK airspace, then they weren't going to investigate any further, and that perhaps the French might like to do that. The French came back with a response saying that if the British military are interested in operating some system over this matter, then they should do so, but neither have come back with anything.
Alderney, Jersey, and the other surrounding islands are dependencies of the United Kingdom, but are in close proximity to French airspace. Boyer finds it surprising that neither country is interested in the event, despite corroborating radar hits and the audio confirmation of a second pilot from Blue Island Airlines.
Jersey Blue Island 832, the zone asked us to look if we could see an object which is being seen by A-Line at the moment. We've got something about 8 o'clock resembling the description.
Roger, Blue Island 832, Roger, what range would you estimate that target?
Around about a similar range to Alderney from us now.
Have you talked to that pilot?
Yeah, I've had a chat with him. Unfortunately, his company don't want him to come forward. He's also wanting to stay away from the limelight.
Well, what did he tell you?
He saw it from about 20 miles away and described the object pretty much similar to myself.
This is probably one of the best, most corroborated, most credible UFO sightings we've ever encountered. And that's mainly because of the way Ray Bowyer took extra care to make sure his witnesses were with him in that sighting.
The Blue Island pilot remains silent to this day, a key eyewitness, unwilling or unable to discuss what he saw. But other witnesses aboard Orani Flight 544 are willing to come forward to discuss the strange events they witnessed above the English Channel. They, along with Captain Boyer, are about to relive the same flight from April 23, 2007. And another sighting shows massive size isn't the only surprising characteristic of these craft.
Became transparent and disappeared.
Almost like it dematerialized.
On April 23, 2007, an Orani Airlines pilot and his passengers claimed to see two giant yellow-orange objects during a routine flight over the English Channel. The pilot, Captain Ray Bowyer, claims the objects are a mile wide and possibly larger. Ted and documentary filmmaker James Fox are prepping a flight aboard the same aircraft, flying the identical route from 2007.
He needed to follow a preconceived flight plan. He was in communication with air traffic control. He was flying under instrument flight rules. You really have to follow the procedure there.
So would you just describe the parameters for the flight?
Sure. It's a Trilander aircraft, 18-seater. We'll be heading, as you said, south-southwest, climbing initially to 2,000 feet.
So we'll be flying really over the exact position and direction.
Exactly the same route, same height, altitude and very similar weather conditions today.
Joining the journey are Kate and John Russell, 2 passengers aboard the April 23rd flight. They also witnessed the gigantic yellow-orange objects in the sky. The plane is a Britten-Norman Trilander, a small-range aircraft used primarily for short-distance flights. It is 49 feet, 3 inches long. The alleged UFOs are described as being over a mile long, more than 100 times the size of these aircraft.
It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Good visibility, very similar to what we have here today. At altitude, we're at 4,000 feet. I could see the object, the one object to start with, and then the second object, quite clearly with the islands behind. And that was then when I got out the binoculars and had a good look. And I could see this perfect shape of a pointed object, very brilliant yellow, with a dark area, 2/3 from left to right, very clear. It was emitting light quite clearly. Both objects illuminating a fantastic amount of light. It was very brilliant and quite difficult to watch.
Were you able to see both of them simultaneously?
Not initially. Initially just one object. And then on descent, the second one became visual.
Roughly how big? Do you have any idea?
I'd say at least a mile across.
Captain Boyer describes the 2 objects at a 15-to-1 ratio of length to height with a slightly elliptical appearance. The objects are also slightly tilted.
Was the sun visible at the same time?
The layer of cloud above was still covering. The sun would have been great because there would have been a shadow on the sea. They also give us an exact position and a relative size, but there was no direct sunlight. That was a shame.
But as the objects continue to remain in view, the passengers are alerted that something is happening.
What about the passengers? Were they taking notice as well at this point?
When I was looking out with binoculars, the chap sat behind me was saying, "What is it? What's that?" Because he could see it. The people behind couldn't see it so well because of the people sat in front. But there are a couple of passengers sat in row 4, John and Kate Russell, they could see it also.
John and Kate Russell are frequent flyers on O'Reilly. They make this trip from Southampton to their home on Alderney often. But they've flown with Captain Boyer on numerous occasions and have never seen him react as he did that day.
And Ray started sitting up in his seat and looking out through the windscreen. Well, you know, when a pilot starts moving around, you begin to wonder what's going on. Then he got out his binoculars. And again, this is rather puzzling because he knows the way.
Ray dipped the nose of the aircraft down. He'd been pointing out something to the person just behind him. So I looked out and I saw a bright light just about there and another beyond it, which was smaller. I thought the second light looked as if it could have been over the island.
Kate, my wife, who was sitting where you are, she then drew my attention to what they were looking at. A couple of orange lights down below the aircraft on the right-hand side. I leant over her, and at this point, there was only one light. A sort of orangey yellow, almost like a football shape.
But John and Kate quickly dismiss the idea that these lights are mere reflections.
We're going south. The sun is to the south of us, the sun reflects, yes, fine, but we're doing 120 knots. Therefore the angle's changing all the time, and this light was constant.
So you're saying it couldn't have been a reflection?
No, it couldn't.
If the sun's reflection had been responsible, the high speed of the aircraft would have eventually caused the light's appearance to change. But, according to John and Kate, this doesn't happen. They are able to see the objects for 3 to 4 minutes, and Captain Boyer has been observing them for 15. And as they get closer and closer, his concern is growing.
When you saw these two objects, what were you thinking? Were you scared?
These things were getting pretty hefty, pretty big, and I didn't want to go any closer with the passengers on board. These things were getting quite close now. But it was at that point, maybe when we were still 20 odd miles away from them, that I started to get somewhat trepidatious about the proximity. If they were moving, they were coming towards us, I didn't know. At that point, radar said they couldn't see anything, so, but I could see them, and they were big. If they decided to come quickly at me, it could have been scary, so we were just getting down and landing. That's what I was thinking at that point.
The plane descends quickly, and Captain Boyer loses sight of the objects. He is able to land safely. Despite the extraordinary circumstances, the passengers give Captain Boyer the highest marks for his reaction to the situation.
He's not a man who gets ruffled. Anytime you knew you were flying with Ray, you felt you were in very safe hands. For him to register the concern that he had meant that what he was experiencing was very abnormal.
Upon landing, Captain Boyer immediately asks for anyone who saw something unusual to leave their information. While the Russells do, some of the others don't want any further involvement.
Or do you feel now that you saw something highly unusual?
The more the time goes by, the more there is no absolute explanation.
Well, if the strict definition of the word, it was an unidentified flying object, because it certainly wasn't in the sea, therefore it had to be flying, and it was unidentified, and it was an object, so it was a UFO, wasn't it?
You've been a pilot for quite a long time before this.
Yeah, 20 years on.
And how long had you been flying this route?
That route at that time, about 8 years.
So you knew it like the back of your hand?
Yeah, probably 2,000 or 3,000 times, you know. It's extremely difficult trying to explain to people what this is all about. And for me, it was so unusual that there's no precedent. I've seen nothing like it previously. I don't expect I'll see anything like it again.
While nothing matching Captain Boyer or John and Kate Russell's description has been seen since, another pilot's sighting of an alleged giant UFO in 1994 has striking similarities.
The dimension was huge, absolutely huge.
In April 2007, Captain Ray Boyer and several of his passengers aboard an Orani Airlines flight see two objects hovering above the English Channel. The objects are estimated to be at least a mile wide. While sightings of this magnitude are rare, they have happened before. January 28, 1994. On Air France Flight 3532, Captain Jean-Charles Dubac is en route from Nice to London. His plane is near Paris, flying at 39,000 feet. The airspace here is typically crowded, but today it's going to have one more aircraft than usual.
We are meeting with retired Air France Captain Jean-Charles Dubac, whose sighting in 1994 of an object over Paris was one of the most incredible stories in ufology.
Captain Duboc is telling his story for the first and only time on American television.
It was a very beautiful weather. We were approaching Paris, and the steward who was in the cockpit said, oh, a weather balloon.
So it was the steward who first said there's a weather balloon there, and then the co-pilot who said there was something there, and that's what directed your attention.
After I saw it, yes, it was on our left, and we look at this object during 1 or 2 minutes.
Though Captain Duboc's steward and co-pilot initially think they've spotted a rogue weather balloon, they quickly change their minds. The object is far too large.
And it was at roughly the same altitude you were saying? As that
it's below us. It was below us.
Below you?
Below us.
But how many feet below you?
4,000 feet. We are 39. It was about 35,000 feet. And so it was really surprising. The dimension was huge, absolutely huge, because the distance was about 25 miles, and at 25 miles you cannot see a plane.
When did you realize it wasn't a plane?
We all immediately identified this object as not a plane. It was different of a plane or a balloon or something. It was absolutely abnormal.
As the object moves towards them, they come to a shocking realization. What they're looking at appears to be a huge flying disc.
What's incredibly striking to me about Captain Duboc's sighting is he's a trained observer, being a pilot, and he was with 2 other people who witnessed this object. And it's apparently about 1,000 feet across, disc-shaped, in broad daylight. And that doesn't sound like a conventional aircraft to me.
It was red brown with a red color, very curious. And it was some kind of haze.
Captain Duboc describes the red-brown disc as having a strange haze or fuzziness at its edges. And as he watches, he says it appears to be banking at a 45-degree angle. He estimates its size to be between 800 and 1,000 feet, or more than 6 times the size of his own jetliner. But what happens next is even more surprising.
So after 1 minute, it became transparent and disappeared.
So did it disappear quickly or gradually become transparent?
Oh, he became gradually transparent.
Like it dematerialized.
When the object seems to disappear, Captain Duboc, his co-pilot, and his steward realize they are dealing with something extraordinary.
2 of the most striking details to me are the huge size of that object. It wasn't the size of a plane, it was much larger. And then when the object seemed to dematerialize before his very eyes, what was the conversation in the cockpit of the plane about this?
Yes, it was, what was it? It's impossible to create such a huge ship and which able to disappear like that, with such a fuzzy characteristic, with this color and this appearance. We cannot do that.
Captain Duboc radios in his sighting immediately to REM's air traffic control in northern France. They confirm his sighting with radar from CODA, the operational center of air defense. Their radar registers a nearly 1-minute hit, which crosses the path of Captain Duboc's Air France flight and then disappears. Despite the surprising detail, Captain Duboc remains silent for 3 years after his sighting. Neither his co-pilot nor his steward make a report. But in 1997, he finally comes forward with his story. 2 years later, it becomes one of the top cases in the Cometa Report, a 1999 document put forth by an independent defense think tank and sent to the French government. The The report uses well-documented sightings, such as Captain Dubois, to make the case that UFOs need to be treated seriously and as a matter of national security.
Were you impressed by the conclusions of the committee report that these were military issues that had to be addressed?
Yes, I was very impressed. I realized it was beyond all everything I could imagine. It was really crazy. We cannot imagine the technology.
And that's the message of the committee report itself, isn't it?
Yes.
The committee report basically just says that we can no longer ignore the extraterrestrial hypothesis.
Exactly.
The report concludes, quote, "These studies demonstrate the almost certain physical reality of completely unknown flying objects. They must be the subject of indispensable speculations and the development of prospective scenarios."
So what you take away from the meeting with Captain Dubois are his impressions of the size of the object. This was clearly something not a plane. And Captain Dubois went on to research what we have to do to understand what UFOs are and why they're here.
What are these giant objects being seen by pilots? Another recent sighting by 2 U.S. Air Force F-15s is captured on tape and raises an entirely new theory.
I have no idea what it was, just to say away from 17,000.
Two pilots claim to have recent encounters with colossal-sized UFOs. Both accounts come from highly experienced pilots. Both are corroborated by radar and other witnesses. But now, a third sighting raises a new theory. Could these alleged giant UFOs be deploying smaller objects? The team heads to the Museum of Science and Industry in Manchester.
We're meeting with British UFO researcher Philip Mansell to talk to him about a case that he's been investigating involving F-15s that were scrambled to check out a UFO.
January 12th, 2007. Just 3 months before Captain Boyer's sighting of two gigantic objects, 2 U.S. Air Force F-15s out of the Royal Air Force Base at Lakenheath are asked to intercept a target picked up on radar. But this object isn't a giant. Its size is on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. These are the actual in-flight audio transmissions.
All right, dude, no kidding. I had a radar hit. There was something there.
The sighting is investigated by Phil Mantle and other British UFO researchers at UFO Data magazine. They receive the audio from aviation enthusiasts who pick up the transmissions on scanners.
We know where it came from. We even know the call sign of the 2 aircraft that were involved. We know the date where the incident took place. We've had it independently verified by the Ministry of Defence. It is the genuine article.
Phil and his partners received this official response from the Ministry of Defense. Quote, "I understand that 2 USAF aircraft spotted an object on their onboard radar. But the MOD does not investigate or seek to provide a precise explanation for each of the 200 to 300 UFO reports we receive every year."
Well, they are not denying it occurred. They're just saying that as far as they're concerned, there's an explanation for it. It was something to do with a weather balloon.
To follow up on this theory, Phil and his colleagues contact the Met Office, the UK's National Meteorological Service. They inquire about the possibility of a weather balloon in the area of the North Sea where the Air Force's F-15s were flying. They are told there were none in the area. For now, with the MOD dismissing the event as a weather balloon and the pilots remaining anonymous, the audio transmissions are the only evidence.
So gentlemen, this is really exciting. This is the actual live recording of the interaction between 2 F-15 pilots and an object.
I had a radar hit.
there was something there. It looked like it didn't look like a bird. It looked like, no kidding, a rock to me.
First is a radar return.
And he says it looks like a rock to me.
I have no idea what it was, but basically, just heads up, try to stay away from 17,000. I have no idea what it was. I'm going to use my radar to see if I can pick this object up again. I picked it up twice.
And so obviously, what are we getting? It is unknown, it's unidentified. Visually, the pilots can't make out what it is.
Most close sightings of UFOs described objects at least the size of common man-made aircraft. And the objects seen recently by pilots have been enormous. But this object is incredibly small, described as a rock. Yet, according to the pilot's descriptions, it seems to be under intelligent control.
It just flew right over me.
Confirm the object appears stationary.
It went from 17 the first time I saw it to 17.7, so it's not falling.
The object now appears to be inexplicably rising.
So not only is it an object they can't identify, it's an object, Phil, it's doing maneuvers, it sounds like, and they can't identify what the maneuvers are.
Exactly.
But what's really amazing is how calm these pilots are. They're not excited, they're just saying what they're seeing.
I want to try to look at it, and then you follow in behind me if you can. I've got it 17,000 feet, 8 miles off my nose, 2.5 miles off my nose right now, 17,000 feet. I have visual now. I'm going to fly underneath you.
His wingman is behind him at this point, so he can't slow down. He's dropping down 2,000 feet to get under it.
Yeah, I got some actual goosebumps there when he's talking about merging. You could just imagine these planes going so fast, and here comes this strange rock-shaped object that they're looking at. That's two pilots, two radar lock-ons, two guys saying that they don't know what this thing is.
After one last pass, the two pilots lose sight of the object.
I don't want to circle back around. Well, hopefully we'll be able to see it. See, did you see anything?
No other evidence of the event has emerged since, and many of Phil's Freedom of Information Act requests are still outstanding.
Interesting to see how the MOD has shrugged this thing off, saying, well, we don't investigate UFOs that don't constitute a threat. Guess what? Here's an object over secure airspace. This tape can turn out to be one of the most critical UFO sightings in all of British ufology.
And the F-15 account has striking similarities to another important pilot encounter. In the 1986 Japanese Airlines sighting, the pilot referred to two smaller objects that accompanied a third gigantic UFO. He referred to the largest object as a, quote, mothership, and theorized that the two smaller objects were ships sent from it, in the same way that aircraft carriers are used by the military. Could it be that smaller UFOs, like the one witnessed by the F-15 pilots, are coming from larger ships, such as those seen by Ray Boyer and Jean-Charles Duboc? With these new types of sightings come theories on both sides of the UFO debate. Could bizarre weather phenomena be responsible? Or does the evidence suggest something else?
For two pilots to see a mirage or a reflection of the same image is very unlikely.
Sightings of alleged giant UFOs have perplexed pilots and witnesses who have seen these colossal objects. But some scientists believe atmospheric conditions could be the missing explanation. Ted and Pat head to the University of Manchester to get this developing theory.
We're about to meet with Dr. Grant Allen, who's an expert in atmospheric science. We're going to have a look at a number of possible explanations for our case.
There are lots of different atmospheric phenomena that could be mistaken for UFOs. I mean, there are many tricks that the atmosphere can play with.
One of these phenomena are lenticular clouds. These clouds have the appearance of lenses or disks, one of the most common shapes of reported UFOs.
Lenticular clouds are a special type of clouds. They're actually stationary. They don't move like most other clouds you might see in the sky. They appear to be stationary, and they're also very smooth.
The clouds form when strong winds come over high ground, such as a hill or mountain. As the air is lifted, the water it carries condenses and forms a cloud with a smooth top and smooth edges. Their appearance is typically quite large and can stretch over several miles, and they can appear to be very strange when compared to the clouds surrounding them.
So to form a lenticular cloud, wouldn't you need some sort of topographic formation to move the air up into the atmosphere like that?
Yeah, you need a very significant hill or mountain, and crucially as well, very strong wind speeds.
So is that likely to happen over the English Channel?
Well, you get strong wind speeds. There aren't many islands, so you wouldn't expect to see many lenticular clouds in the Channel.
Not only is the English Channel an unlikely location for these types of clouds, they are also almost exclusively found at high altitudes of 20 to 40,000 feet. Ray Boyer's sighting was only at 4,000 feet, and Charles Duboc's sighting near Paris, though at the correct altitude range, describes a tilting object. Lenticular clouds have little to no movement in the sky, and these types of clouds are never detected by radar.
What about sundogs?
Sundogs are a phenomenon related to ice crystals in the atmosphere. Whenever the sun is low on the horizon, sort of at sunset, ice crystals in the atmosphere on the horizon can bend sunlight. Now this has the effect of forming patches of light either side of the sun.
Though bearing no resemblance to Captain Duboc's reddish-brown disk, could bright yellow sundogs be what Captain Boyer saw over the English Channel? Sundogs typically appear in pairs and have the same bright yellow-orange characteristic of Boyer's objects. But sundogs mostly appear at sunrise or at sunset on the horizon. Ray Boyer's encounter occurs at 3 p.m.
Sundogs actually are fairly rare, and they look quite striking when you see them in the atmosphere because they're quite unusual. Most people would realize it's a patch of light and not a solid object.
But Dr. Allen has his own theory on the Ray Boyer sighting.
Having looked at some data for the area, there is evidence for a very strong temperature inversion in the atmosphere.
Temperature typically decreases with height in the atmosphere. An inversion occurs when the temperature increases with height. When this happens, the inversion layer can act as a mirror, reflecting or even sometimes bending light along the atmosphere. The inversion could not only create bright objects like Captain Boyer describes, but false hits on radar known as anomalous propagation.
What about these brown or gray bands that Captain Boyer describes?
Well, that could be explained by an object in the path of the rays of light. So if there was a very small cloud in the path that the light has taken, then it would appear as a shadow on that object.
But the idea of a temperature inversion may be put to rest by a recently issued analysis from several atmospheric researchers who published a thorough report on Captain Boyer's sighting in 2008. According to the research into the event, quote, the triangulated apparent location of UAP number 1 near Alderney was intersected by the reciprocal sightline from Captain Patterson to an unusual yellow object at a similar height in a similar location. What this means is that if Captain Boyer was seeing a reflection or other optical illusion from his sightline, it would be highly unlikely for the second pilot to see the same reflection illusion in the exact same place.
I think for two pilots in two completely different locations to see a mirage or a reflection of the same image is very unlikely.
Does that influence your opinion of your answer at all?
I think this is the most likely of a list of unlikely explanations.
Science continues to struggle with answers for the objects that these pilots are seeing. And witnesses remain resolved. These giant objects are not illusions.
People say they can't believe in UFOs, but here I don't think it's a matter of belief anymore. I mean, we've investigated the cases, we have audio evidence, we've talked to the pilots, we've got corroborating witnesses. It seems like regardless of what people believe, pilots are seeing UFOs.
If you think about these cases, the amount of air traffic is only increasing. I can only think over the course of the coming years, we're going to see more and more of these kinds of reports.
I think the reports will only proliferate. And we have a lot now, we're going to have even more in the future. In most investigations, sightings usually occur from the ground from far away. This is a whole new level of UFO encounter.
As sightings of UFOs continue to increase, are they getting closer and larger?